I don't have anything off the top, Matt, so if you want to kick us off.
Yes, please, thank you. Before we get into what I'm sure will be Middle East-related things, I just want to check on the state of transition. Has there been any contact between the Secretary and nominee Senator Rubio?
There has not. We, of course, congratulate Senator Rubio on this announcement. To date, the incoming administration, President-elect Trump's team, our understanding is that they have yet to sign the memorandum of understanding as it relates to some of the transition endeavors, both with the White House and the GSA. I will let them and the GSA speak to that process. And as it relates to the transition between administrations, transition between secretaries, we stand ready to support that process, stand ready to assist. I have no doubt that in the weeks and time ahead, there will be appropriate engagement between the Secretary, Senator Rubio, engagement between the teams. But of course, first step would be for that MOU to be signed, which...
So in other words, that hasn't been...
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Unless anyone else wants to ask about that, I want to go to the Middle East.
I think, I don't think your question's on the transition, Ksenia. It is? Okay, go ahead.
Exactly my question. What foreign policy changes do you expect and hope to avoid once Rubio becomes Secretary of State?
So,
I mean, is there anything Secretary thinking would want him to stay the course?
Ksenia, I'm just going to jump in right there and just echo what you've heard the Secretary, the President, Matt, and others say. There is one president at a time. There's one Secretary of State at the time. The kinds of foreign policy and national security objectives the incoming administration may or may not pursue, you certainly can speak to them. And to the extent that they continue to hold daily press briefings, you can certainly ask them about it after 12 p.m. on January 20th. Till then, President Biden is president, Secretary Blinken is secretary. Matt and I are the ones up here doing the daily press briefings, and we're happy to talk to you about the things that we're continuing to pursue over these final days in the administration, which we have talked about at great length. Anything else on the transition? Otherwise, I imagine Matt and others want to get back to news of the day.
Yeah, I just want to, I wanted to ask you about the latest after our exchanges on, I guess it was Tuesday, about the aid situation and this new UN Commission report that is very harshly critical of Israel. One, since Tuesday, have you seen anything that would make you think that they are now more in compliance with the criteria that were laid out in the letter? And number two, what do you think of this UN Commission's
let me get to the second part of your question first. As it relates to the UN Commission, I've seen some of that reporting, and we've seen some language coming out of that indicative of their belief that some of the actions could be constituted as, this is their phrasing, genocide. That is something we would unequivocally disagree with. Again, we think that that kind of phrasing and those kinds of accusations are certainly unfounded. As it relates to the humanitarian situation, I laid out on Tuesday some of the steps that we have seen taken. We expect some additional steps to take place as well over the course of this week. Particularly, we anticipate that the IDF and COGAT may make some adjustments to the list of items, the dual-use items that would be allowed to be categorized within humanitarian aid. Certainly, progress in that space would build on the many things that I outlined the other day on Tuesday. And all in all, what we want to see is all of these things in their totality continue to contribute to an improvement in the humanitarian circumstances on the ground.
But they haven't done that yet.
That we expect a decision to be made on that sometime this week.
And there's still been no meeting of this civilian harm reduction.
That is my understanding. But again, these items were
October 31st, even before the the deadline on Tuesday.
Certainly, our hope and our expectation is such an engagement happens as soon as possible. But ultimately, Matt, look, we talked a little bit about this the other day. we want to make sure that these kinds of efforts are sustained over an extended period of time. You and I and many others have had a fairly extensive back and forth on Tuesday about the contents of the original letter that Secretaries Blinken and Austin sent in October, but also the results that we're seeing on the ground. Obviously, colleagues in the humanitarian space had some perspectives and points of view on this and well. And I say all this to say that at the end of the day, we welcome criticism of the United States record. Certainly, we even welcome criticism of Israel's record when it's warranted. But certainly, it ultimately, at the end of the day, needs to be grounded in facts. And the facts are this, is that on many of the items that were outlined in this letter that was sent by the secretaries, we have seen progress and steps in the appropriate direction. What we need to see now is these kinds of events sustained over a significant period of time, and our hope is that through the significant progress steps that we've seen, that the operational space has been created to see an additional inflow of trucks, see an additional inflow of humanitarian aid, that all in all, contributing will hopefully help address the dire humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, you keep using the word hope and the words hope and expectation. You know, it's just, at this point, it kind of sounds like, you know, thoughts and prayers being offered for victims of tragedies. Which are you saying that all accusations against Israel are unfounded?
No, what I'm saying is the accusation of genocide, specifically in that UN commission, those accusations are unfounded. Also, in the point that I was making about criticism of Israel needing to be grounded in facts, our viewpoint is that some of the metrics that were outlined by some of these humanitarian groups in their scorecard release the other day are inconsistent with what we're seeing on the ground. And just some examples of that. That scorecard said that humanitarian aid had been cut off in the north. That is not accurate. Not accurate from our reporting and not accurate from our engagements with people in the region. Food and supplies had been delivered to Gaza City for weeks now, and last week we've also saw some progress in Jabalia and some of the surrounding areas. That scorecard had said that the Musawi humanitarian zone had not been expanded. Also not true. We have seen the humanitarian zone in Musawi expanded. So there are just some simple things like this that we think are inconsistent with the facts on the ground. That does not mean to say that the humanitarian situation in Gaza is perfect. It's not, as I said on Tuesday, but any criticism of the United States or Israel and our humanitarian undertaking absolutely needs to be grounded in the truth on the ground. And some of those metrics are inconsistent with what our colleagues and those who have been engaged on this deeply are seeing directly.
Well, I'm kind of surprised you want to get into metrics that are contained in the NGO report, since you absolutely refuse to get into your own metrics when you were asked about it numerous times on Tuesday.
We certainly were. We did.
So
let's get
into the most basic metric, which was the number of trucks of aid going in every day. You said 350 was the bare minimum. What is it?
That certainly was the metric that was outlined in the letter. And as I said on Tuesday, the metric that we had as it related to between November 1st and November 9th, let me just pull up my notes. And I unfortunately don't have a more updated figure for you at this time, but the metric that we had seen between November 1st and November 9th was 404 trucks. Again, I don't say this to say that we are satisfied with that number. We certainly are not. And some of the changes that I outlined on Tuesday, the opening of new gates, the waiving of the customs requirement through the Jordanian corridors, some other measures, the hope is that the government of Israel, the UN, and other regional partners can utilize those changes to see an influx of trucks go in. That is what the United States certainly expects, and it's what we're going to continue to push for as well.